I think we have to keep our expectations in check. The points of friction between the United States and China are deep and structural, and they're not going to be solved by meeting for a handful of hours in London. I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind is that it seems that what the tariff war is now morphing into much more of an export control war, which will be more difficult to resolve. The U.S. is growing increasingly nervous about restrictions being placed on its access to critical materials, and China continues to be concerned about the ratcheting up pressure and the ratcheting down of access to some of the technologies it's going to need for AI. So in terms of what they're going to be able to wrap up by tomorrow, I do think we'll need to keep our expectations in check.
Yeah, because in terms of expectations, when they met in Geneva a couple weeks back, the whole world was surprised that after just 2 days of weekend meetings, they even had was kind of like a joint statement almost from both sides acknowledging the progress that had been made and the de-escalation. Are you expecting any kind of readout or statement this time?
I think it's entirely possible, and I think it's also possible that they might announce some mutual loosening up. China loosens up on some of the restrictions on the critical materials, and perhaps the United States will loosen up on some of the restrictions on the technologies that China is so interested in. Certainly expectations have been piqued on that front by the inclusion of Commerce Secretary Lutnick in these discussions. He did not participate in the discussions in Geneva, and the fact that he's here now in London leads to some speculation that we might see some progress on that front, because it's Lutnick's department, the Commerce Department, that administers those restrictions.
Yeah, so Lutnick, as you say, his agency or his department ministry oversees the department that is responsible for export controls. But we also know Lutnick as an advocate for tariffs. He supports high tariffs to reduce the federal deficit. So when you put those two in the balance, which one do you think will come out ahead? Will we make or see more ground on the tariffs or on the export controls?
I think Lutnick is going to do what his boss wants him to do. And I think the fact that President Trump got on the phone with President Xi and these discussions are a direct result of those discussions means that there's going to be pressure on negotiators from both countries not to come home empty-handed. So I think we're going to see, at least if nothing else, at least some symbolic progress, at least some optimistic news to report coming out of the London meetings. But nothing that will move the dial in a fundamental way on the underlying points of friction between these countries.
Would we be able to use other countries as examples? Because we've heard over from the EU that China is now establishing what is known as a green channel to ease exports of rare earths for eligible applications. And we've seen just yesterday in the reporting of China's latest export figures that the export of rare minerals, rare earths, was up 23%. So do you think that they could, lean on that as an example?
I think it's possible that they might attempt to try to follow that model, but I'd caution that the U.S.-China relationship is in a category all by itself. And I think President Xi Jinping understands that he's got some fairly strong leverage here. And I don't think he'll be inclined to make any significant moves in the absence of some significant concessions on the part of the United States. During the first Trump administration, we had the so-called Phase 1 agreement, which was really entirely a one-way street. It was China making concessions to the United States and the United States not doing much of anything. I don't think we can expect to see anything like that emerging this time around.